Thank you, Brian. Good morning, everybody. This social justice service will be a bit different from what you are used to. We want to share some information with you, but we also want to hear from you. The Social Justice Committee wants to start a conversation within the congregation about the proposed eighth principle and how we live the values it brings to the fore. The goal of the committee is for the congregation to adopt the principle as part of our congregational meeting in June of next year. However, having that vote in the absence of a conversation and study is missing the whole point. And what I really mean by that is just passing something and not living and embodying the words of that principle it's just an empty gesture. So our committee has been studying the history of racism in our social justice book group for the last year and a half. We have read and discussed the book How to Be an Anti-Racist, the book Caste, which the reading was from, and also Waking Up White. We've read those as a group, and individual members of the book group have read other books. And I expect that all of you have been paying attention to the current events in the last 2 years and have seen the increase in participation in white supremacist groups and white supremacist groups in our country emboldened by the former president. And in that way, the unthinkable is becoming the normal, as you heard about in the reading. We need to address the racism in word and in deed. So here is the text of the eighth principle. We, the members of the congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and in our institutions. So we've put together an information sheet with answers to questions that a lot of people have about the eighth principle, and that was in your order of service. Hope you can take a look at, take it home with you and take a look at what's in there. And also there's some links that are very useful to get more background on the eighth principle. So let me briefly summarize the key points in the handout. The proposed principle is not a reaction to any event. It has been discussed over many years. The idea is that what we as UUs need to renew our commitment to the work and fulfill the potential of our existing principles. The recent history of the new Jim Crow, the push by states to restrict voting rights, the police killing of George Floyd, and many others makes it clear to all who are paying attention that our country is moving in the wrong directions when it comes to, quote unquote, dismantling racism and other oppressions, as is stated in the principle. The goal of beloved community embodies the promise of our faith and is the reason that I am devoted to our faith and to this congregation. Let's all try to imagine a future diverse congregation in the full sense of that word, where we participate in interdependent relationships of love, mutual respect, and care that provides a foundation to realize justice within the community and the broader world. For me, the endorsement of the Black Lives of UU is the most powerful reason why I support the adoption of this principle. These are the people who endure the lived experience of racism. I can't say it any better than that organization. So this is a quote from Black Lives of UU. Ours is not a religion of anything goes. As Black Unitarian Universalists, we acknowledge that while some see our faith as a big tent where everyone is welcome, UUs cannot uphold precepts or practices that undermine the worth and dignity of people of color at our common altars. We will not affirm white supremacist rhetoric, structures, or practices as being in alignment with Unitarian Universalism as a spiritual community. The maintenance of white supremacy and anti-Blackness, in particular, whether in the practices of the association or in the hearts of parishioners, has no place within our faith and must be unequivocally rooted out of our culture. While Unitarian Universalists have no creed to which they must attest, our living tradition is a faith guided by principled action. As such, we wonder why the dismantling of white supremacy, as implicated by the eighth principle, has not been formally included in our covenants as Unitarian Universalists, end quote. So now I'm going to open up the floor and invite all of you to comment and talk about our proposal about the eighth principle and your feelings about it. So we have a microphone, or you can come up to the podium. And actually people on Zoom, they can raise their hand and maybe will let me know, and we can put you live here on our speaker here so that we can all hear you. For the people on Zoom, though, we won't be able to see you, so you'll need to tell us who you are, because we won't see your face. So who is willing to provide some comment? Margot.
Well, I'll just have to say that initially, when this came out, it's like, I don't see why we need this. It seems like our other principles could include this, you kind of look in a broader sense. But when the Black UU group started talking about it more, I get it, and I really support the addition of this principle.
There's folks on Zoom.
Just speak up when we talk about.
Okay.
Because you're talking to a math. Yeah.
Who else? Marta?
This is Meg Kelso, and I just wondered, I have heard all of the arguments for this. Is there any argument against it?
Okay, that's a good question. I know we had an adult RE session about this about 6 months ago maybe, and I think there was some concern about the principle. I don't know if, what? Yeah, right, sort of like the redundant aspect, potential redundant aspect, I guess.
So this is Maggie, Ingalls. What I remember from that discussion is, one, it's already covered in our other principles, which that is definitely true. But we, and then the other thing was that the principle itself was long and wordy. Those were the objections that we heard in the adult RE that I can remember. Okay, and then Mary Lou, I'll give this to you so you can do next.
I am definitely in favor of this. I was part of some of the early discussions, and I have the same feeling that Margot does, that it seemed at first like maybe this is a little redundant, but the more you think about it, the more it grew with me. So I'm definitely in favor of it, but I'm also, that doesn't get me all the way there with the idea of making this something that we officially say. It just doesn't, I'm not sure how we apply it. And so I'm almost left with like, this seems like we're probably going to go in the direction of affirming this, is my general understanding of having talked to people about it, but that's not enough. And I'm literally not sure what we would even do in Napa. Our congregation is all white, we are really we're in a community and have been for a long time that is a very brown community, and we still have not managed to invite people successfully into the congregation. And so I have some concerns about that.
So there's someone on Zoom? Okay. And then someone on Zoom.
I hadn't heard the whole principle until now, and it does seem a little wordy and long to me. It seems like it would have more punch if it could be shortened some.
Hi, this is Lenore in the Zoom room. Okay, now my mind completely went blank. Okay, so the basic principle is obvious. I'm wondering if given the understanding many folks have that all of our institutions in this country are built on white supremacist notions, has anybody in the UUA thought about or written about what would we have to do differently as a denomination, as a congregation, once this principle is adopted?
Sylvia, go ahead.
Well, I recall in the 60s and 70s that the UU Black Caucus raised most of these issues with our national organization, and there was very heated discussion at every level. There were a great many changes made, including looking at diversity on the national staff and the national leadership. I think we struggle with the problem here in Napa that we don't have a large African-American community. And second, the question is, what about us is appealing to non-white groups? And sometimes I think maybe, I don't know, but it seems to me that many of the people of color who have come into our church come with backgrounds very similar to our higher level of education than the general population. This may have changed because we have placed more emphasis on our universalist underlying roots, because I do see a change in congregations around the country with not only larger black and people of color in leadership positions and in the pulpit, and in some congregations, particularly in cities, larger cities than Napa. So that's one thing, but the other part is, what about us speaks to people of color? And another change that I have seen over the years is the change in the music of the church to become more inclusive music in the popular music areas. There are more hymns that we have now that are directly related to the movements, the civil rights movements. I have, well, with the declaration from the current thing that you read from the current UU caucus, I sort of balk. I know that's not in the principles, but I sort of tense up my shoulders when I hear words like unequivocal. That doesn't sound very Unitarian to me. I know that's not in the principles, but I wonder if some of that underlies some of the words that also cause discomfort in the general community, white supremacy. I mean, I know what it means and I understand it and I know it's there. It just sort of sounds like fighting words. So I wonder how you and your committee have struggled with this. And if any of you remember the Black Caucus of the 60s and 70s.
Thank you, Sylvia. I don't think, I think we want to just make sure we hear from everybody and then, but, so I think Maggie, you had something to say regarding Lenore's question. What? Let's go ahead and, okay. Go on and make sure we hear from everybody. Okay. I think you're right. Yeah, we might as well.
How nice to take off my mask. Well, oh, I'm Bonnie Richardson, and I want to build on what Kate said. And, you know, in our community here in Napa, there's not a large Black community, but what there is a large Hispanic community. And in Vallejo, there's a large Black community, Hispanic community, and Filipino community. So we really have to be, it's more than just writing a principle. And sometimes I think that's what Unitarians do. They write a nice principle and then move on. So, but what, from reading Caste and reading Waking Up White, which is written by a Unitarian woman, there's no particular reason why people of color need to come to us. And exactly what Sylvia said about we can appeal to a small amount of, you know, educated, perhaps middle-class Black people. But religion is it's a volunteer activity. It's something on some level you do for enjoyment because you have a community. And to go into an all-white congregation is really uncomfortable for most people of color. So I think we need to go out to other religious groups. And most Hispanic people in this community are either Catholic or they're Seventh-day Adventist or evangelical. And I love the reading because it talked about our discomfort with other people's type of religion and how, in a way, the writer, and, you know, I can identify with that, almost despise Black religion as being too emotional. And, you know, I've been taught that, to not, that's not as good as Unitarian Universalism somehow. But it is. And we have the opportunity to go and work with Black congregations or other congregations in Vallejo, and Dave has talked about how Common Ground has done that. So that's how we do that. But that's what I think is important going forward, and to make that commitment is to reach out and understand other people's religious passions and not expect other people are going to come to us.
So we have someone on Zoom. Okay. Oh, Phyllis, go ahead.
Am I unmuted?
What?
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay. So, piggybacking on Bonnie and Kate, that was obviously the next question, and I have the same feeling that sounds like this will be adopted. And what does that mean to us, to our congregation? And we can only start where we are. And I also agree that doesn't mean to try to attract other cultures or whatever to our congregation, or for that not to be the specific goal. But it seems to me that we have more educating to do of ourselves. And I can think of within our community, at least the greater Bay Area, a couple of Black authors who've written about the history of Solano County or other parts of California. They would be wonderful speakers for us, or perhaps an immigrant or several. I don't know. It seems to me we are at a place of needing to learn more, and Native Americans, etc., and go from there. And I think even that, if we publicize some of the educating or opening up that we're doing, trying to do, that alone may attract some people who are also interested in learning more about what we've missed out on by being in a dominant white culture. So that was my 2 cents.
My name is Nancy Miller, and this is only my third time being here, so I've been familiar with UU for a long time, but I haven't ever been involved, but I intend to be involved now, and I really love this congregation. My background is being in a church where you're trying to bring people in because you're, how do you pronounce the word, proselytizing? Yeah. And sometimes it feels like, oh, we just need more money to bring in their tithe, or more people to bring in their tithe, or something like that. And I know it's not really, whatever. Anyway, so my first question was, is the goal of the principal to bring in more people of different colors, or is the principle to change our behavior, or to make us go out and even if we do go into Vallejo and we do volunteer work or whatever, is the goal that we want people to drive all the way to Napa and go to our church, or is the goal that we just want to make the world a better place? So that was my first thing. And then I think it was Phyllis who was just talking about bringing in Black speakers or something like that. And I think that's fantastic, but I really like what she said about sort of advertising it, because not that we need these people to come in, but that there are people out there who don't know that we're here. I mean, it's just like with me. I didn't realize until I actually came here that I feel really comfortable here, but it's because my sisters are UU. And if they hadn't been UU, I would never even heard of the UU church. And so I think it's important that people know that we're here not to benefit us, but because there may be somebody out there who could be benefited by us.
Okay, I'm unmuted.
We're good? Okay.
Am I to speak now or?
Yeah, go ahead and speak, Crystal Argo.
Well, my Black fiance in Nigeria and I have had hundreds of conversations about racism and that sort of thing over the 2 years that we've been together online. And I'm going to preface what I'm going to say briefly by saying in Nigeria, 2 nights ago, I was just reading about current population. There are 216 million Black people in the country of Nigeria alone. And I asked a Nigerian friend, a different person, different man, long ago, if the atrocities that the government commits against the Black population of Nigeria were caused by white people in the government. And he said, he texted me back, not one single white person in our government in Nigeria. So it's the Black people against the Black people. And a day ago, Bright and I were again discussing this racism thing. I'm sharing this with you to help you be perhaps more aware of the extent and the worldwide problem of people not getting along, so that we can look at the value of this principle. So Bright texted me after we were talking about the things that happen that are so atrocious in Nigeria. Honey, that's bad when white race is fighting Black race. They call it racism. But the Blacks themselves were still killing fellow Black race like them. What should we call that? And that just really, really gave me pause to consider the huge problem of the human race. What do we call it when we can't talk in terms of the white supremacist
Thank you, Crystal
way of
Lago.
life?
I'm worried about the time a little bit. We
Yeah,
understand your point. Yeah, you bring up a good point. So I think we have one more person on Zoom. Who is it? Sylvia. Oh, Sylvia. Hi, Sylvia. We're kind of running out of time, but are you ready?
Yes. I'll give you my experience here at the Meadows, where we have no Black people on the staff or in our midst. In our current events group, we discussed the idea of reparations for families of former slaves. And I heard several comments of the same kind. I grew up in an all-white community, and I never, ever have had a conversation with a Black person. Now, I don't know whether that applies to people of other color or not, but it occurred to me that, and this I totally support what Bonnie said and what Phyllis says, adult education. So the first thing I was looking at to ask for is to develop a reading list for whites of books written by people of color that tell clearly the experience of their lives, because that at least is a first step. So I ask your opinions about that. Caste is certainly one of the books that I would put. The second thing is maybe it's time to bring back and revise the old church across the street that we did for our 7th graders in our RE program, and add the religions of people of color, put this on Zoom under our name as a series of presentations and discussions. That's something I think we could do, and I'd certainly be interested in looking into that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sylvia. And thanks everybody for sharing your views. I think this has really been a good start, and I think we'll do this again, maybe not as a Sunday service, but as like a separate meeting. So maybe we can have a little bit more time than the 15 or 20 minutes we had here today. Again, thanks for your thanks for all your input.
So I'm really thrilled that we're also engaged with this topic, and very sorry to cut it off, but that's our promise, is to try to keep our services to about an hour. Okay, oh right, thank you. This congregation depends entirely upon the generosity of its members and friends. All that we give in time, talent, and treasure is what sustains this community and makes it not just a sanctuary for us to return to for spiritual nourishment, but an oasis from which we can go out into the world, carrying the waters of life. All checks should be made out to NVUU, and we're not doing the share the plate, because the share the plate that went with this service, when we canceled the service on the rain during the rainstorm, I didn't know when we were going to repeat it. So we're going to do that share the plate on the 4th Sunday in November. So that will be Puertas Abiertas. It is going to happen on the 4th Sunday in November, but not today. Okay. If you're not here in the church, you can donate by going to our website at nvuu.org and clicking on the donate button, or you can mail us a check at NVUU 1625 Salvador Avenue, Napa, California, 94558. The offering will now be gratefully received.